The snatch can be one of the most aesthetic things you'll see in the weight room. Different nations and different coaches teach it differently, and different athletes interpret the movement in their own way. And even though the fundamental rules have to be followed in order to make the lift, there are some athletes who perform the movement in a way that's infinitely more satisfying to watch than others. And that's exactly what today's tier list is about. This is not some scientifically analyzed technique tier list where I break down hip, knee and back angles. It's purely about the vibe, how satisfying the lift looks and how much cortisol my body produces while watching it. I cut the list off at D tier because we're obviously still talking about elite professionals here, and to be honest, I enjoy watching almost all of them. We are just here to have a bit of fun, but none of these athletes have F tier technique in any universe. Akbar has, for me, a perfected basic technique. It kind of looks like everything you get taught on day one in the gym, just maxed out in terms of skill. Yeah, exactly. Hips at that height, build tension in the back, lift parallel, stay over the bar, keep pulling. And he stays extremely patient with his wrists over the bar, which leads to an insanely satisfying flick of the wrist in the catch. A great example of not overcomplicating things or trying to copy fancy starts and unique footwork, but instead maxing out the fundamental elements that make up the snatch. Ilya is obviously mostly known as the king of the clean and jerk, but specifically his snatch as a 94 kg lifter was suggested here, and I think it was on another level compared to when he moved up to the 105. He was unbelievably fast and even snatched 196 in training during his off-season, and also snatched 200 from the blocks, which might be one of the fastest lifts of all time. It's really interesting how for some lifters gaining body weight seems to affect their snatch performance negatively in particular. It was still great obviously, but I think 94 Ilya sits in a solid B tier. Clarence's technique went through a ton of phases over time. I think the most notable period was when he had a Polish coach, and in my opinion his overall technique was at its best. Then of course came the period where he went full throttle and started putting up world-class lifts. But at that point it also kind of felt like there had been a shift. More towards brute force, more inconsistency, more reliance on his insane strength. I mean, fair enough. But it was less traditional and less efficient technically. His best snatch is probably the 195 that he hopefully uploads someday, but there are already tons of 180 plus videos and even a 190 snatch uploaded on his channel. Those were obviously the videos that got me into weightlifting in the first place, and it was incredibly entertaining seeing how he could still channel all that power and athleticism into his snatch. But considering the list and other lifters on it, his snatch is probably C tier for me. Okay, this one's obviously difficult because we are talking about literally the second biggest snatch in history, but I just have to say it's not exactly pretty to watch. It's very rough, it always looks like a half power snatch that's being forced into place, which is obviously heavily related to his proportions. And I mean, a 217 snatch is just unbelievable. And it's probably even more impressive that with those proportions he became the second best super heavyweight snatcher of all time. But my cortisol level goes through the roof watching it, so D tier. While the internet argues about whether technique or strength matters more in weightlifting, athletes like Tatiana show what's really up. Both. She's truly late-stage Russian weightlifting system incarnate. Insanely perfect, efficient technique combined with casual 255 back squats made her the greatest female weightlifter the world has ever seen. And considering the landscapes of super heavyweight snatches, where technique is often pretty rough, it's even more impressive seeing a super heavyweight move with such graceful technique. As you can probably imagine, we will come back to someone similar later. For me, Tatiana is the first S-tier athlete. Karlos is, without a doubt, the most famous weightlifter of the modern era, and his achievements absolutely turn heads. But his technique also creates a ton of discussion. A lot has happened with him recently too. Back when he completely dominated, a lot of people thought his technique was suboptimal, especially the way he jumped forward. Since then he's rebuilt his snatch from the ground up, with the help of some of the literally greatest weightlifters of all time, Syrtsov and Blagoev, plus an ever-changing coaching team. So far it hasn't led to the same success as before the technical changes, but that could be due to a multitude of factors, and I mean he's still winning gold anyway. Taking all that into account, I'd put him in C tier, more on the rough side technically, insanely strong, but not really someone where I can say, yeah, I could watch this all day. We just talked about him and here he is. Probably the greatest pound for pound snatcher in history. 195.5 at 90 kilograms. He looked like an absolute tank but was incredibly fast. Interestingly, he did two things he would never teach anyone. First, he looked downward during the pull, and second, he had a pretty pronounced rounded break during the first pull. But he kept the bar somehow insanely close during the pull under and was just unusually quick, especially for a 90 kilograms lifter. It's a shame there's so little footage of him. And I just have to put him at least in A tier. If there has ever been a true snatch expert, it's Rybakou. In case you didn't know, his snatch and clean and jerk were so close together that he regularly had to follow himself after the snatch portion, putting up some of, if not the craziest snatches of the 21st century, and then having only like 10 to 15 minutes to warm up for clean and jerk because he had the lightest opener there. His official world record was 187 at 85, and online you can also find a 191 from the off-season at the Belarus Nationals. If you're that efficient, your technique has to be extremely refined. He really showed what it means to stay over the bar in the snatch, and he fine-tuned every little detail where you can gain 1% here and another % there. From the extremely narrow stance during the first pull, which gives you a few extra centimeters of height on the extension, to the length of the second pull, everything was completely dialed in. But I have to say his technique is so good that it's almost a bit boring. There's nothing that really jumps out at you as insanely satisfying to watch. So for me, B tier. Now, this is someone I could watch all day. He's not just one of my favorite snatchers, but one of my favorite weightlifters overall. His technique is somehow really unique. It's hard to imagine how strong you have to be to move 200 plus kilograms in the snatch, not like that, but like this. His greatest lifts were obviously the 200 kilogram snatch at age 20 at the Olympics and all the insane training lifts from every possible position with 200 plus. And then of course the legendary comeback years later with grey hair, returning to Worlds and hitting another world record in the snatch. The hip contact is so hard and aggressive, yet he still doesn't launch the bar forward. You can actually see the bar oscillate a little from the impact of the contact. A real technical masterclass. S tier. I would consider the dream team to be Timur Naniev, Artem Okulov, Viktor Getz, and Abdi Okadov. All incredible technicians and all relatively similar too. You can say whatever you want, but it's so cool seeing how some nations manage to enforce a technical model so consistently across so many clubs and training centers that in the end you look at the team and instantly think, yeah, they're all Russian. I'm a loud feat enjoyer, and with this team it just looked so perfect, so controlled, but still insanely fast. Real masters and A tier, though there was still one guy from that team who ascended beyond them. Maligov basically put the crown on the whole thing. Everything the others did, he somehow did even better. There's a video from ATG where you can see his entire warm-up, and you know someone has endgame snatch technique when they are casually power snatching the entire time. The weight keeps increasing, he catches it with the exact same rhythm every single time, and then eventually he just naturally lands in a full squat, stands up and casually goes 3-4-3. There are insanely crazy training videos where he's snatching into the high 80s, and apparently those clips are even from when he was still an 85 kilograms lifter and not a 94, which would make it even crazier, though I couldn't confirm that. S tier. Mohamed Ozbek is on his way to becoming one of the greats ever since making that drastic weight class jump. And with his build, he honestly looks like he should be a pure clean and jerk specialist. But man, he has his snatch dialed in. I love how he enters the start position with that little hop, and his receiving position is so satisfying and locked in. It looks like a puzzle piece fitting perfectly into place. I love seeing the children of weightlifting legends get into weightlifting themselves, and seeing traces of the parents' technique shine through in the next generation. And that's exactly the case with Marcin and Martina Dolega. Marcin was a world record holder in the snatch and world champion. Snatched over 200 in training, and now his daughter Martina has recently appeared on the radar of the weightlifting world, and the way she pushes her head through in the catch looks just like her father. Polish lifters usually have an extremely cool way of getting into the start position, and Marcin is no exception. His snatch was incredibly consistent. He regularly opened with insanely high percentages, and the whole movement just screamed confidence. I'm curious to see how his daughter develops moving forward, but for now I still prefer his technique slightly more, though who knows how that might change over time. I still remember when that training hall video of Arley Mendes from the Worlds 2017 got uploaded, and I genuinely couldn't comprehend how sick that technique was. He does things in such a unique way. If you handed me a broomstick, I still couldn't explain exactly how he does all of that. It just looks insane, and he's just unbelievably fast. And he's all over the news right now because he joined the Enhanced Games. On one hand, I kind of get it, and I hope he walks away with a ton of money and sets a new world record, but I also kind of wish he hadn't ended his career by becoming a chess piece for some of the worst billionaires on earth to advertise a pharma company. But back to the snatches though. He's clearly an S tier, I could watch him all day. Sometimes I feel like the OG lifters had a rougher style technically, but not Syrtsov. His technique looked so polished, and it almost feels like Even though everything is happening in real time, he briefly pauses time after the second pull and there's this tiny bullet time moment. I also love how he really tightens himself into the start position. It just looked professional. A tier. Szymon is a tank and lifts like one too. Back in the day it all looked pretty decent, but over the last few years especially his snatch has gotten worse and worse, both in terms of load and overall execution and technique. Nowadays it's honestly rough, and most of the time when he catches a snatch it ends in a press out because he grips absurdly wide too. D tier. I'm actually really glad someone suggested him because I had completely forgotten about him, but when I watched the videos again I thought, damn! I just love when lifters reach that kind of speed in the snatch. His turnover was incredible, and despite the wild style, he still had 100% control in the catch. I hope he comes back someday. It would be interesting to see how he would do in the new weight classes. Small side note, in my last video I covered a Bundesliga competition for the KSV Durlach, and he actually lifted for them too. I didn't even have him on my radar anymore, but honestly, S tier. My coach who taught me weightlifting used to be on the Hungarian national team, and he gave me this name for the video too. He told me he was the generation after him, but that he was always super impressed by his snatch. Absolutely classic technique, and I think his very long setup is also pretty typical for Hungarian athletes. Sadly there isn't much footage of him, but when my coach is impressed by someone's technique, it has to be at least A tier. Robu is honestly kind of a champion just for making it this far in weightlifting despite his huge limitations. But especially his snatch just looks really sketchy, so he probably ends up D tier, even though I somehow also still kind of like the way he lifts. I don't know, it's difficult. At least he's now for many years European champion. Like I said before, I absolutely love loud feet in the snatch, especially when they really smack into position. Gabriel has some of the sickest technique in both lifts for me, and it's so good to see that he's still going hard and staying active on social media. He genuinely does almost everything exceptionally right, and it's always impressive seeing lifters who are insanely fast while you can still clearly observe how they actively keep pulling with the arms after the hip contact for that extra little bit. Without question, S tier. Whenever people rave about Chinese weightlifting technique, I always think of Lu. Not only did it result in him being one of the greatest snatcher of the century, it also just looked insanely unique. Again, one of those examples where I couldn't imitate what he does even with a broomstick. Like, how does he lean back that far? And another thing that added to the aesthetics of his lifting was the fact that he himself just looked aesthetic as hell. And considering how I was taught weightlifting, it still fascinates me how the Chinese lifters generate so much power without leaving the floor. Whenever I tried only lightly sliding my feet, I had to hold back my power output somehow, but that never seems to be the case for them. Absolutely jaw-dropping and S tier. The dream team around Klokov, Lapikov, Akayev and Ivanov all had perfect technique too, though still a little different from the generation after them. Klokov had tons of different snatch styles throughout his career. As a junior he still used loud foot movement and a completely different start than later on, when he eventually snatched over 200, but it became perfectly fine-tuned for his strength, which also led to some of the craziest heavy snatch variations we have on tape. Rybakou had incredibly technique for a super heavyweight, which is honestly rare when you look at most supers. Some of my favorite snatch videos ever are his 180 for 5 and 210 for 2. Even though the snatch is such a technically demanding discipline, some athletes still manage to power all their violence into it while keeping the bar in all the right positions. Akbar was one of the few who could do that at this level. Super entertaining to watch.
Down, starts to compensate, running forward, trying to...
And Alexander Ivanov simply had that classic Russian super technique. I also think you especially notice true technical mastery when people do complexes or rep work in the snatch. The way they move in these little moments in between reps just screams technical mastery. All of them together, A tier. Even though Szymon Koletsky is more known as a clean and jerk specialist, I love his snatch technique. Just the way he moved into the start position and lifted the bar from the floor looked so cool to me. And to be fair, he also came very close to world records in the snatch, so it's not like he was weak there either. I've said it before, but the ATG video showing his entire journey from a little kid to absolute machine, and especially how his snatch technique got sharper and sharper over the years, is one of my favorite videos ever. So maybe not understandable for everyone, but for me, he is S tier. The training hall videos of Max Lang from 2015 were probably among the first weightlifting videos I ever watched. And his technique there was peak. Of course his technique was still very good years later, but I think that 77 class was just perfect for him. The way he moved and how perfect all the positions looked was breathtaking. Later on he also developed this tendency to jump sideways sometimes. Maybe due to injuries, I'm not sure, but specifically Max Lang 2015 training hall was suggested here, so A tier. What can I say, I could never really get tired of watching her either. The aggression in the catch and that punch through to stabilize the lift are just insanely satisfying. She set world records in the snatch both in competition and also just days beforehand in training, which is probably one of the most legendary training hall footage sessions out there. Absolute legend. That mix of aggression and precision makes her S tier for me. If there's one technique where Bruce Lee's quote,
"Be water, my friend,"
fits perfectly, it's Adi Latuli's. His snatch is so flowy. With him it looks like one continuous movement, whereas with other lifters you can often clearly identify the pulling phases. I really hope we get to see more from him because I love watching him lift. Honestly, S tier. Lasha is exactly what I was talking about earlier with Tatiana. It's insane how this 1.97 meter, 180 kilogram man could move like that. I used to think super heavyweights just couldn't keep the bar that close because of the size of their belly, but Lasha completely disproved that. And not just slightly either, he extended the all-time record by a ridiculous 9 kilos. All the training hall videos with all the different snatch variations are like a fever dream, and I'm super curious to see what happens now that he's announced a comeback. So yeah, that was the list. Huge thanks to everyone who sent in recommendations. I honestly didn't expect that many responses, so of course I couldn't fit everyone into the video. And definitely let me know in the comments which other snatchers are S tier for you and who you would have ranked differently. And I'll see you in the next video.